Okay, now you're live.
All right, very good. Welcome everyone to the October 13th HPC meeting, public meeting. A quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission shall come to order. This commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from Municipal Code of the City of Annapolis, Chapter 21, Section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, districts of historical, cultural, archaeological, or architectural significance. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in Chapter 21, Section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Okay, so that's the first item on the agenda. Second item on the agenda is a roll call. Bill Williams, please say aye. I'm here.
Aye.
Okay. Kim Finch.
Here, present.
Bobby Collins.
Present.
Will Scott.
Here.
And I'm Tim Leahy here. I'm chair. Also with us this evening, we have staff, Roberta Lanar, Chief of Historic Preservation.
Here.
And John Tower, the Assistant Chief of Historic Preservation.
Here.
And Joelle Braithwaite from the Office of Law in the City.
Here.
And Cheryl Wood, who is our designated liaison with the Office of Law for the HPC.
Here.
All right. Our recorder is Tammy Hook, who keeps me making sure I don't forget things. I'm gonna get through this meeting without forgetting something.
Yes, you are.
I just cursed myself, right?
No, you didn't.
The next item, we are authorized as a commission to require an oath in order to testify, and this is done en masse. For those of you who've never been to an HPC meeting, we normally would have you stand up and do this, but just you'll be able to say aye as I read this. It includes applicants, staff, consultants, and any members of the public who seek to enter their comments regarding any of the applications which will be heard tonight in the public meeting. If you intend to testify, please raise your right hand and repeat after me or answer this question. Do you affirm, under the penalties of perjury, that the testimony given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief? Please respond by stating, I do.
I do.
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Roberta or John, do you have any announcements?
I'd just like to mention that there are quite a few members of staff, both within my department and outside, working on guidelines for fall and winter outdoor dining, because that a lot of the visual and safety aspects are going to change with tents and heaters. So just to let you know that we are working on guidelines to promote both safety and some consistency within the recovery zones.
Yeah, and I'll chip in there. I was working a bit with Roberta on that as well, and she's helping Sally Nash and develop across the whole planning and zoning department. It's been a lot of work, and I think hopefully it will yield improvements in terms of visual reduction of visual clutter. Not to mention safety, which is actually the most important thing. Okay, any other announcements, commissioners? Okay. Next item on the agenda is violations. Any reports on violations?
I don't have an update, just to say that I'm glad we were able to resolve the violations from last month through applications.
Great, Thank you. All right. We don't have any minutes to approve this evening. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent docket. This is a procedure designed to expedite certain applications before the commission. In order to be considered for the consent docket, the application must have received recommendations for approval or approval with minor conditions from all city staff and commissions and the commission's technical advisors. Also, there needs to be no public opposition to the application. If an application is approved on the consent docket, the application does not need to testify, the applicant does not need to testify further, and you are free to go. But please remember, you still must obtain the necessary permits from the city prior to commencing work. And please remove the big old sign off your property. The following applications are possibly eligible for consideration on the consent docket. Number 1, 215 King George Street. Is there anyone in the meeting who is opposed to this application? Okay. Number 3, 2 North Acton Place. Is there anyone in the meeting who is opposed to this application? I actually have a question for the applicant on this one. I just want to confirm that the drawings that we're using are the most recent revision, which is dated 10/9, October 9th. So I think it's the gentleman from Pella Windu who we would want to answer that question.
East 71 Conduit Street.
I'm sorry. Good. Long Fence. I had the guy from Long Fence. Thank you, John.
Mhm.
So,
Hi, this is Dan with Long Fence.
yes,
You had a question?
I did. I just want to make sure that the revision is the version we're approving, which is dated October 9th.
That is correct. The homeowner requested the change in the 2 sections of fence,
Yep.
left and right of the gate, after the review from the review comments from your architect.
Okay, that's fine. So it's the straight
Straight,
edges on the
not
2
yet.
sides, and then the curved top on the gate. Okay.
Yes,
Just
sir.
making sure we got the right drawing. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely. Thank you.
The next item that's available for a consent docket is 126 Market Street. And just want to see if anyone is opposed to that. Okay, and for these applicants, the reason we need to go through the process of having a consent docket and the public hearing is it gives an opportunity for that public testimony, which would not otherwise take place. And these are not simple changes that we can delegate to staff. So that's why we ask you to come to this meeting and go through this process. Okay, I will take a motion to accept the consent docket.
I move that we approve the consent docket consists of applications for 215 King George, 2 North Acton Place, and 126 Market, based on the fact that they adhere to the guidelines as mentioned in the staff reports.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstain? Okay. So for those of you, it's approved. These 3 applications are approved. And thank you for coming. And you may go forward with your project. Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is 71 Conduit Street, number 2. So first we'll accept, first, were there any site visits? Yes, I site visited.
Is that everyone?
I'm sorry, Tim, looks like Will. Anyone else? Bobby? Bill?
No, I didn't. I didn't make a
didn't?
site visit.
Okay, Bill? Yes, he did. Okay, great. All right, next we'll accept exhibits into the procedure. Let me see if I can flip over there. I will accept exhibits. Okay, we're accepting Exhibit C1, which is the public hearing application. C2, the certificate of approval revision dated 9/25. C3 is the staff report and recommendation dated October 6th. C4 is the photograph of the notice for public hearing dated 9/27. And C5 is D. Hertz's email to Sherry Pippin dated October 8th, 20. Okay. Is that good, Tammy?
That's good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So for the applicant, so you understand the procedure, that you'll give us your presentation first, and just tell us what you'd like to do. Then staff will present their report. We'll accept any public testimony, and then we'll close that, and then we'll go into deliberations and talk about the applications, and then hopefully we'll move to a motion. All right.
Okay,
So you've been promoted. Welcome.
okay.
Tell
Thank
us what
you.
you'd like to know, and we'll have a conversation. Go ahead.
Yep, glad I'm first up, sorta. I don't know exactly how people present it. I did not prepare any significant visual tools besides the information that everybody did receive.
That's okay. All of us
Yeah.
have that in our file, and we've all reviewed it, understand that it's a front door and 2 rear windows, and have all the drawings.
Yep. So the recommendation, originally the front door is 32 inches wide currently, which is a little undersized. Originally, they wanted to expand the front door, which was one aspect of the project, and then the second aspect of the project was 2 rear windows that are currently single openings, and we wanted to widen those openings a little bit over a foot total, with double casement windows. So the recommendation was pretty strong. I worked with John throughout the process, and he warned me that the front door, widening the opening, would be hard to get approved. So when I understood that fully, we went back to the homeowners and we designed the front door to fit within the existing opening, which the recommendation was supported by the architect. So it doesn't seem like that's a ton of question. It is a mahogany door, craftsman style. There was a similar door on the same street, and I think that was okay with everybody, to my knowledge. But I'm glad to field any concerns or questions you have about that one. When we read the architect's recommendation for the 2 rear windows, to replace them with single windows that fit within that space, our initial thought was to withdraw from the public hearing. The process took the homeowner a long time. They're a new owner in Annapolis. They weren't really super familiar with how the historic commission worked or anything like that. So they had no idea what to expect. So, and Pella's never done a public hearing application through Annapolis. So our reaction and the homeowner's reaction when they saw that it wasn't recommended was, oh, let's just do the front door and not go forward with the meeting. But then Roberta did reach out to me, explained to me that, the commission should speak with it, not to put words in her mouth, but it wasn't like a strong, super hard no. It was, I guess the neighbor had requested a modification in the past and that was turned down. So that was one of the reasons why she leaned towards not recommending the 2 rear windows. But the 2 rear windows that we wanted to do, we did structural drawings for them, so to make sure that we did the proper framing for it. That's how we do any modification, whether it's in a historic district or not. So we went ahead with those plans, had a structural engineer do a full floor plan of the house.
Excuse me.
So that's included in the drawings for the windows. We weren't prepared to do architectural drawings, but if you have the original pictures, the windows are currently, I believe, about 30 inches off the corner of the house. We want to go approximately 6 inches over, and then or a little more than 6 inches, total of about 15 inches tall, so 7.5 inches on both sides, centered a little bit closer to the corner of the house, a 46.5 by 55-inch window. The windows would line up equally from above. They had talked about doing a wider window upstairs, which it would have been harder to do the framing because you have to run the framing all the way to the foundation. So when you do the window, two windows lined up, you just have to run the framing into the top of the header below that. And architecturally, it's a more consistent look, more consistent style. If you look at the back of the home, it has been modified significantly before. I believe it was the other owner of the duplex, but there's a large, strange shaped window behind it. So my main argument that I just wanted to get across is it is an improvement from the current windows. They're brand new wood interior, wood exterior, Pella Architect Series windows. We'll put wood trim around the windows, make it nice, neat, clean. And the customer, it's not one of those cases where they need to replace the windows. So if the double casement in both openings is not approved, they would just live with the existing windows. I don't believe they match, and they're starting to deteriorate a little bit. So those are my two real main arguments. Is they want to expand the opening to get a little bit more light in those areas. It's a duplex. The areas are not visible from any public area whatsoever. So it's strictly, the back of the home, an improvement from what's there. And my personal opinion is it doesn't degrade the character of the home because of the previous modification with the large shaped window above there. And it kind of almost takes the attention off of that. And, there'll be two brand new windows for this duplex. So it's kind of separate from anything else there. So that's really all I have. There's a cross section of the windows. It's Pella's with our wood windows. They're more traditional. They're not thin. They have a little rounded profile on the edges. Casement windows are obviously less popular in historic neighborhoods than double hung windows. But there are most traditional wood casement window. It's the only way we do our wood windows.
Okay.
So that was the main points I wanted to get across. So I'm glad to hear what anybody thinks. If they have any questions on the door or those two back openings there.
Okay, thank you. So that's a good way to split it up. Does anyone have any questions about the front door? So what we'll do is we'll ask if anyone has any clarifying questions at this point. Commissioners, any clarifying questions on the door?
No, I don't have any.
No.
Okay. How about the rear windows? Clarifying questions at this point?
No.
I just have one. In your application, it says 15 inches for the new windows. We don't have an elevation drawing, but that's 15 inches total, or is that 15 inches on each side?
I'm sorry. I had the plans on my phone, so I'm just it's easier than I just wanted to make sure I was going off the top of my head. Oh, it's 15 inches total.
So it's 7.5 on each side, and you'll center that basically on where the current windows are centered.
Yeah, if you see the document labeled 2076 underscore KC Pella, the structural drawings. Page 1 shows the existing location of the current window. And you see there's 2 feet from the corner. That would be the beginning.
I got it. You're talking about the plan.
Yeah, on the plan, it's 2
Okay.
feet from the back corner. And then the window is 3 foot, 11 and a half inches, which is 46 and a half inches total. And you can see from the drawing how it's centered, taking the, going a little bit closer to the corner and then going farther. So it's not, skewed one way. It's very close to centered perfectly there. A modification of 15 inches wider than the current window and the same height. So they're not like excessively long or anything like that. They're not excessively modern. They're pretty common, things you'd see in a kitchen these days, kitchen remodel. And then the window above is just there to match it.
Okay. All right. Roberta, would you please provide the staff report?
Everyone hear me?
Yep.
As simple as the request to enlarge 2 windows seems, it became more complicated due to the symmetry of the duplex. And also because, as David mentioned, a decision had been made on the other half of the duplex several years ago. And so therefore I thought a public hearing was necessary. So this is a duplex constructed between 1885 and 1891. And it was enlarged first with a 1-story rear L for each duplex. And by 1930, they'd been connected. And then after 1930, they'd been extended up to 2 stories. And the attic is a full cross gable wing. And as David mentioned, there is symmetry to this, but the character defining symmetry has been somewhat altered by the addition of contemporary windows at the attic level on the other duplex and the raising of one first floor window on the other duplex and the addition to the side light of a door to the other one. But what threw me here was that a similar request to replace a first floor rear window with a double casement was made by the next door neighbor a few years ago and was told to work with staff to further modify the application. And so then that was changed, and a month later, the window was simply raised a couple of inches. And at that point, it just seemed unfair to me to make a recommendation that was different from the other half of the duplex. And at that point, as David mentioned, the owner was going to withdraw the application. And I said, no, please don't. To be fair, the commission should make the decision. There have been changes to the rear. We do see changes when folks add additions to the rear of buildings. And I felt that there was an opportunity for the commission to deliberate and, if necessary, disagree with my findings. But that's what was limiting me in the finding to allow the windows. That's all I have to say, unless perhaps John Tower would like to add to it, because he has worked with the applicants.
Yeah, working with David was a pleasure, and it's his first HPC presentation, but I think he did quite well. David was certainly willing to respect keeping the front door in its original size, and so he withdrew the 36-inch door and replaced it with a 32-inch door that I think is probably more in keeping with the architectural style, at least for the street. It's certainly a little later than 1885 or 1891, but it's it's compatible and I think sympathetic. For the rear of the house, there is definitely an implied symmetry, but it's not perfect symmetry with the windows. The form that is there is not as important a contributor to the house as certainly the front streetscape is. The rear duplex has been modified significantly over the years and several times. So there is an implied symmetry. It's completely actually out of whack because some windows have been raised and others are of a style that isn't mirrored on the opposite side. But as I said, it's implied. In terms of preservation, since the addition is relatively new, the L in the rear is relatively new, it would not be affecting any sort of, let's say, primary historic resource. So I think that that should be considered when you're making your decision.
Okay, thanks. Any clarifying questions from commissioners to the staff?
Quick question.
Yeah.
When were the modifications that Ms. Lehner referred to made? The date?
Well, if I could speak.
Sure.
The L was originally not joined and separate. That shows up in the Sanborn, the earliest Sanborn. Later, the L was, I believe the L was extended but not joined. That might have been 1921. By 1930, I think the L was joined in the back, but not the size that it is now. And then I think it grew after that. And
in that process, the asymmetry was introduced.
Actually, I think the asymmetry is much more recent. We have a kind of quasi Palladian.
It's a stretch.
Well, I want to see that.
That's a stretch.
I don't know. It's in the right a stretch. Well, you know, there's a reference there. I didn't know how else to say it. And then, one of the windows was raised for the next door neighbor, and so
when did that happen? That's what I'm really getting at.
Oh,
2008.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I had a question. What happened with the window that we don't know what to call? Was that done? Has everybody seen that? Because I think that's a huge.
Yeah, it's in your application. Yes.
Yeah, and that most people did a site visit.
Yeah.
How
only
is
on the
that?
front. We can only go in the front.
Yeah, we can only go to the front.
Oh, okay. Well, it's very dramatic. It's the first thing you would notice if you were back there. The how was that done? Was that a violation? Was that a time where it wasn't?
Yeah. We actually, I can address that. We don't know, and what we need to do is evaluate every application on its own. So
Sure.
so yes, indeed, that may or may not have been
I
approved
understand.
today, but we really just need to focus on
I
that. But it is a
understand.
contributing factor to whether the environment, there are similar things in the environment, but we don't know the answer to your question.
Right, and I respect everything about the way it's done, and it's separate, and that doesn't change what would be allowed here.
Mhm.
But I just think it's that the premise for one of the premises for not choosing to recommend this window was based on the symmetry of the duplex was based on the denial of a similar window. But I'm just wondering if when that window was denied, it was taken into account that there was a previous violation. Maybe it was a different
You don't know.
person there, but
Yeah. We don't, again, we need to, we'll get into deliberations, but we just need to take a look at this application, and we can consider the environment, but we just don't know. There are many cases there that were changes in the historic district for information.
not arguing, but if we're just looking at this case, how is it relevant that the neighbor happened to be turned down if everything is case by case? And that's my only questions.
That's a good question. We can deliberate about that a little bit.
Yeah,
Among the
that's all I
commissioners.
got.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. If no other questions for the applicant or staff, we can move into deliberations. How persuasive are the discussions here? I think the front door probably, if we separate that out, I don't think we have any issues there, but let's talk about the rear facade and the two windows. Who would like to speak?
I'll start.
All right, go ahead, Bobby.
There's really two things that I do take into consideration when I look at this. And one, even though we consider what an application brings on its own to an argument, I do see a back facade that has a lot going on. Clearly, there have been a number of things going into the way it looks now. I mean, there's what I count 6 different window styles on the back of the house. And that does, of course, impact the way you see it. But when we look at this application purely on its own merits and purely with the guidelines that we use to make our decisions, and we look at the facade and we want the symmetry, and we can't look at the sins of the past or the decisions of the past. We have to look at it purely based on what's put in front of us today. And I'm sensitive to the fact that we need to keep some kind of order in the back of this house. So that's kind of where my thinking sits.
How do you feel about the larger window versus these fitting inside the existing?
I have trouble seeing how with a larger window we would keep the symmetry that we need to keep.
Okay, Will, your hand?
I think Bobby stated the issues very, very well. I only can say that I do not agree with her final decision or opinion on the matter. I don't think we can restore the symmetry. I think that it's the rear facade. I think that so much has gone on over time that I think we would be penalizing this applicant in a sense, because they're asking for something that in another situation would be not even a cause for concern. I think Bobby's very well stated the concern that we all need to consider, but I don't think that that's enough reason for me to vote to deny this. So I would support it. I would vote for the requested alteration.
As submitted on the windows. Yeah. Okay. Bill?
Okay.
Bill?
Yeah.
Sorry, Will looks like he's frozen up on mine. I don't know if anyone else knows that.
Maybe if he turns off his video and we just go with audio, that might work.
Okay. Just jumped around. I agree on the fact that the denial of the previous application in itself should not have bearing. The symmetry of the building is apparently there. It's a little questionable. It's representative. The purpose of the new larger window, other than being a larger window, does it have any other purpose? Is it being created as an egress window from a space or anything else?
I think it was mentioned as such.
That's a safety element, and that's
Would that can the applicant respond to that? That did not come up in any of previous discussions.
Sorry, my son has invaded the room here.
Can you weigh in?
Unfortunately,
Do you have comments you'd like to make?
David, up. Let's meet him.
what's that?
Hold him up. Let's meet him.
Well, he's right here. Daniel, he's pretty shy, but
He can be
I'm
very
at home
persuasive.
and I told my wife it wouldn't take too long, and I exceeded that limit. But I apologize. But
Peter has run
Daniel,
it.
you want to say hi?
I'm coming, Nick.
But what was the question?
Does the larger windows have a purpose other than just being a window? Is it a egress window? It's a safety item?
The windows do meet egress.
Is it
Yes.
necessary for the building?
The larger ones.
It is necessary in the upstairs, but the current window does meet egress as a
Okay.
double hung window.
Okay, so the current one meets that, so it's not, the window is not necessary. The new window is not necessary for egress.
No,
The larger one.
certainly, it's not necessary from a safety standpoint. No,
Okay,
it serves the same purpose as the current window there.
so we're basically looking at getting a larger window into the room.
Yes, the duplexes are pretty tight. So it does, the main purpose is to create light. It's one of the visions of the owners as soon as they moved into the house to gain a little bit more light. And they wanted a wider window upstairs, which would have been not symmetric at all. The fact that there's two double casement windows lined up, I think it provides more symmetry than what's there currently. But so we did explain to the customer, not anything to do with historic, but why it would be nicer to have a window the same size right above. It was a much more practical installation, and we thought aesthetically it would be much more pleasing. So I know that's not relevant necessarily, but the request could have been a little bit worse if they weren't symmetric. These are two identical windows lining up totally evenly. I think it provides a lot more symmetry than the double hung and then casement above that's currently there. So I think it's a start.
I think I'd agree with you on that. Just,
And the
okay.
and it's not one of those things where they have a dire need to replace the window. So the windows will stay exactly the same for a could be a pretty significant period of time if this is not approved. So this achieves more symmetry. It's a newer product, a better product, a more consistent product. What I think Annapolis would prefer. Which is a nice.
We would prefer the original windows, historic wood, single frame paint.
They're gone.
That aside, your mutton pattern, the muttons themselves are going to be wider just because of the construction of the window than what is historic.
Sorry, what was that?
The muttons, they're going to be wider.
There are no muttons, I
normally.
don't believe.
It's a case.
There are
Yeah,
no
there's
muttons, Bill.
no muttons.
Mutton?
The
I
windows
thought we
are
had
just
a mutton pattern on there. It's just
the mutton pattern was for the door.
okay. I'm sorry, confusion.
Yeah, these are two there's going to be a middle style down the middle. It'll break that
style. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the revised or the recommendation from the staff for a single casement window in a smaller size, more consistent with what's there now, would also achieve that symmetry, would it not? Because they would be the same upper and lower.
If that was towards me, yes. But the customer has no desire to spend money on new windows. The whole point of the back window project was to enhance light.
Okay.
So that's they are not going to replace the windows. Otherwise, we would be talking about that as a backup option.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are totally fine hopefully just doing the front door if the back windows are not supported by Annapolis.
Mhm. Okay,
Thank you.
Kim, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I looked at the back and it looked like Window World, you know. Like, there was like every option you could choose.
Including the left block.
Yeah. So, but I was basically very encouraged by the application that proposed two windows that were consistent and regained some of the symmetry attached to it. Roberta, remind me, so we looked at this on a stringent standard, right? But I think I thought that the consistency of replacement of the both windows to match was a good move forward myself. And because, but I could be dissuaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the issue really is the replacements. Kim, how do you feel about the extension of 7 inches wider on each of the windows? Do you feel like that continues to be compliant? And I'm looking at D17, which is new windows in existing buildings. And when we use the word symmetry, I think we're talking about the scale, rhythm, and formality of a building. So that's what we mean. Symmetry is not actually in the guidelines. But rhythm, formality, scale are. So does this disrupt the scale or rhythm if it gets bigger?
Can we ask John Tower how, having dealt intimately with the applicant, why he moved? It seems like he's in support of this. And can we ask him why?
Well, I'm not sure. Well, what do you think? I think it's John has testified.
Would I support it? Well,
and why? Why
would I have designed it?
Probably,
would you? But it's not my taste. And
again, would you support it based on the guidelines, not your taste?
It's not working within an existing frame. So typically, based on guidelines, I would say no. However, this is a much altered rear of the house, and it has very little effect on the historic integrity of the structure. And from that perspective, I could say yes. So
okay.
It's difficult.
That's why we're having this conversation. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, I'm being persuaded that we could return some sense of symmetry to it by allowing these windows that are going to be more symmetrical than what currently exists. So it sounds to me like we're somewhat returning to turning to the original sense of symmetry, which would have been an important part of an accurate house like this, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that the application as presented with the extra 7 inches on either side is still keeping that symmetry, or are you saying we should follow staff recommendation that have the smaller window, in which case we've heard the applicant probably would just withdraw those windows?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, think about it a little bit. I guess I'll weigh in and then we'll poll the commissioners. But this it appears to be. First of all, I agree with what everyone's said, that the rear facade is a mishmash, and the integrity of the facade from a window contributing has been compromised. And again, I'm looking at D17, talking about the rhythm of and scale and formality. The formality of what existed is pretty much gone with those delta windows. Now, what we can do to answer David's question is we look at the neighboring buildings, and if this application has an adverse impact on those, then we would rule strictly on it. Given the fact that the neighboring building is compromised to a certain extent, it does not have an adverse impact no matter what we do. So I think that's very important. And I think that in the interest of so therefore what I'm saying, I don't think it's out of compliance with D17 if we allow the larger window frame. It's 7 inches on a compromised facade. It's not, it doesn't matter whether it's a rear or not. Yes, it's not quite as strict, but still we need to consider it. So I would support the application as submitted. We need to have a homeowner who wants to improve their property, and I think we ought to be working with them and be, in this case, it's still compliant. It's just different than what exists. So that's kind of where I'm going with my deliberation. I'm persuaded that it is compliant with D17. So other thoughts?
Tim, I think you speak my mind.
Okay. So right now, I'll just poll it. I think it seems like we, at least Kim, Will, and I are willing to remove the condition that was added by staff. And Bobby was on the fence, and Will was on the fence, I think. So what, Will and Bobby, are you persuaded either way, or we can just take a vote if you prefer?
You've persuaded me to a certain extent. The only thing I wrestle with, and it may or may not affect my vote, is, as I said when I stated, I worry about letting what happened before that we may or may not have agreed with, and I dare say we certainly would not have agreed with at least one of the windows on the other side of the duplex. I worry about having those things affect the vote that we do now. You know, that, okay,
Well,
so in the past, things were done that wouldn't say more than altered the,
right.
the fenestration and the rhythm and the integrity of the back, the back facade. And I don't want to hold this homeowner accountable for those things. It's not his fault what happened.
Of course not. Yeah.
You know, and if my fellow commissioners feel that it's a good thing to go with a larger window, even though it does change the cadence of the back a little bit, because it may help bring back some of the symmetry and help bring the building together a little bit more in the back, then I'm persuaded.
Yeah. Well, I think that it actually adds another element. I'm not sure it actually adds, I think it doesn't destroy the scale and rhythm that doesn't exist. My feeling is it doesn't destroy. I'm not sure it adds symmetry. I think in my mind, it adds another element, which is just another element to a window world, including glass block. I mean, so I find it, I find it still compliant. And as to anything happens in the future, the neighbor, we don't know. And I don't remember that application, but if I was involved. So that's kind of, it happens frequently that a different commission is in place and it has different opinions.
Well,
Okay.
but what we're doing is returning to real wood windows, and
Yes.
And instead of replacement in kind, which when we get replacement in kind, all too frequently we get replacement with vinyl or something else.
Right.
We're moving into a more compliant format. I I think we're moving into a better quality window. And
Okay,
these were not original windows we're replacing. That's
Yeah,
that's
it's very true.
my personal thought about this, that if
Okay.
we can move it into a more
An improvement.
symmetry and more material compliance, we've made progress in some way.
Okay. All right, then I'll take a motion.
Let's see. I move that we accept the application for, I've lost my paperwork, for,
Need
where are
six
we?
screens.
71 Conduit, am I right?
Correct.
Yes. I got-
Anywhere in Annapolis.
I got too many windows open, I'm sorry. I move that we accept the application without the conditions placed on it by staff.
Except for one condition remains that they've accepted. I'm sorry.
The wood
I
door
don't
in the
know.
existing
The
opening.
door, the
yes.
door needs to stay.
That the door is as recommended by staff, a new wood door in the existing opening, but that we approve new wood single casement, or excuse me, double casement windows in the enlarged openings.
Okay. If you'll accept a friendly amendment, if you would mind listing the guidelines that it complies with, and if you would add D17 to those.
Okay, the guidelines are D1 with the Secretary of the Interior standards 1, 2, 5, 9, and 10, D3, D16, D17, as you said, D20, and D28.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a second.
Second.
Kim seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? All right. So thank you, commissioners, for the conversation. And David, you are approved to go forward with the door and the back windows
Thank you. Thank you.
as is submitted.
Yeah, and
And
thank
if I could say something, this was just my effort at equal justice, because they were going to just slip away, and I wanted them to be sure and have the fairest application possible with commission deliberation.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
thank you.
as you've seen,
Yes, thank you.
you know, the deliberations can work very well. I'm
Yeah, Roberta
bad.
totally convinced us to stay in it. So
Sure.
we misunderstood it slightly, but yeah, thank you very much for
All
convincing
right.
me to do it. And hopefully the homeowners will be very, very happy that they can do the windows they wanted.
Okay, great. Thank you, David.
All right, do I need to do anything else, or?
No, you'll just follow up. You'll get your what you probably need to amend the drawing with the new front door. And provide that.
The revised documents,
Yes,
they have all the newest everything.
is on
We
there.
have a custom door. We even had the structural engineer remove the door from the drawings because it's no longer structural work.
So I'm just saying, Roberta, is the drawing, do you need anything else from David?
No, he gets a certificate of approval,
Perfect.
and the
All
next
right.
step is a building permit, and it moves on to that side of our department where you will have the building permit application reviewed.
I understand.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Next on the agenda is pre-applications. I lost my agenda now. Which one is first? Someone?
9 Shipwright.
Okay. Is there someone here to represent 9 Shipwright?
Oh, there's Jay Schwartz.
Hey, Schwartz.
Hi, Jay.
How are you? Thanks so much.
All right. This is a pre-application, and as you know, it's a accommodation granted to the applicant, and we'll have a conversation back and forth regarding the application, and in no way should our discussions be considered deliberation or approval or denial of any aspect of the project. Can you acknowledge that by saying yes?
Yes, I acknowledge. Thank you.
All right, good. All right, Jay, tell us what you'd like us to know.
9 Shipwright Street. I have given you a set of drawings that are for the pre-application. It includes, I apologize that technology has let me down or vice versa, that they are a little bit out of order. We show on page, we have drawings of the house itself, of the proposed house, which obviously are in a pre-app form. We have maps of the location and of the streetscape. And I think those are probably where we'd like to go. But I think initially the project is a 19 unknown house. It's on the Sanborn Maps in 1959, but not in 1930. The only photographs of the property come from, the earliest photographs we've found are in 1957. There's nothing on the Maryland Stock Trust. The current owner, Laurent Comte and his wife, are French citizens, and they have sons in school here in the United States, and they want a house. They love, they sail, they race. They want a house in Annapolis. They looked at this house as a renovation project and could not do the renovations primarily because of the basement is below FEMA guidelines. They would have to raise the basement. Raising the basement would mean they would not have, they'd lose, they basically have to gut the entire house and start over. And so that's what they've decided they'd like to do. So this is a request proposal for a demolition of the existing house and to build a new house. That's the big picture. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to walk down the Shipwright Street and take a look. I don't know if you have drawings in front of you, or I can pull up my drawings if that works.
It's up to you. Most of us, I have the drawings up. I imagine most people do. But if you are technology enabled,
Share them
walk
would
us
be
through
great.
drawings so you can point them. If you can't, sharing would be great, Jay. And if you're unable to do that, just tell us what page you're looking at. A200.
Well, I'm looking at, so they're slightly out of order. I'd like you to turn to page 8, which actually is called out as page 1 in the drawings.
Yeah, what's the drawing number? A200,
1.
Sorry?
It's actually 1, page 1. It's numbered as 1, even though it's page 8 in the package.
Okay.
I'm still having trouble understanding, Jay. I see in the lower right-hand corner of a drawing, SP100, A100.
Keep going, Tim, keep going.
Okay.
It's towards the back.
It's page 8 of the set.
There it is. I see it now. Got it.
Page
Thank you.
1, and that just shows the
The site.
site. And on the bottom left side is the Sanborn Maps, the 1930 to 59 map. We looked at the maps the city has, and we couldn't find anything additional, and there are better maps in the city and the Historic Preservation Office, Planning and Zoning Office. The one on the left is the 59 map. The one on the right is 1930 map. So the house was built in that era, 30 to 59. On the upper right is an aerial photo. An aerial is spelled incorrectly. 1939. And it is not in that red circle. And then in the 1957 aerial, it is, and this is from the Public Works Office, a photo on their wall, this photograph. And it's behind St. Mary's. I think you all know where it is. And then from the water side, it's the waterfront. And another spelling error, apologies, neighborhood is spelled incorrectly. We'll fix that by the time we get to a real submission. This is a pre-app.
Right.
If you go to the next page, it's really the streetscape and the existing house from the water side and from the street side. So the upper 3 photographs, the left hand is the water side, and the right side is the street front. It's a gambrel shape roof. And then on the lower level, the lower sheet is just the streetscape. There's on the east side of the house, there's a renovation that was done in the, I believe, 80s. 7 Shipwright. It has a double gambrel postmodern facade. And then as you just go up the street, in this time frame, the street's hidden by trees, but there's other residential structures. The next sheet is more streetscape and talks about height of the street. The height of this zone is a 22-32 overlay. And the houses on the street are anywhere from 25 to, there's a tall of 35 to a ridge up on the corner. So it meets basically, it's a similar streetscape, upper 20s to low 30s along the street, and varying in types and styles. There's no predominant type or style on the street, in my view. We are proposing a new house to meet the height guidelines, to meet the setbacks, and replacing the existing house in exactly the same footprint. If we go back to page 2, the original page 2, which is a site plan. SP 100.
All right.
We have strict zoning guidelines of setbacks. The existing house is within a foot of the property line on the west side, which is the upper side of the sheet. And then we're basically replacing the footprint in place with the same footprint. It's an odd shaped lot in that there is a 1 parking space on the east side that was carved out of, I guess that's 7 Shipwright at some point. I mean, it's an odd, it's just an odd footprint. We have a pretty severe rear yard, water yard setback. Again, we're meeting the current zoning requirements and historic district requirements for site plan. And then you can see the FEMA, the dark line is the FEMA water line. And because the house sits within that water line, we must meet FEMA guidelines, which means pulling the basement up about, I think about 3 feet off of where it is today. And that skews the entire interior. And that really drove the decision to try to rebuild, to tear down the house, demolish the house and rebuild. So I think the first request we have is approval to do demolition. And then in this set of drawings, we've proposed a new house. And I can walk through the house. I mean, it's
real quick question for you, Jay. So it's basically on the same footprint, and it doesn't require any variances from the setbacks. It is a tiny lot. I went down.
Correct.
It's very small, and you've already checked that you can build on the. It doesn't look like it complies with current setbacks between the buildings, but it gets effectively grandfathered.
Yes, and the historic, if I may, the historic district code to setback says if you own 0 feet, you can maintain 0 feet,
Okay.
and we can replace 0 feet. We reviewed that with planning and zoning staff, Tom Smith and his
All right,
staff.
good.
We reviewed the water yard with Cynthia Goodneas, who sort of handles critical area and water yards.
All right,
So you are correct. It's a tough lot, and so we're putting a lot into the envelope.
Okay.
The existing house is 3 floors. We're proposing a 4-floor house, and it's pretty simple. It's still living. It's a house with living room, bedroom, guest rooms. Pretty simple layouts, all trying to make the tiny footprint work. To me, the critical elements are not the interior layout, which we've included, and you can see. I think the elevations are more important and the scale of the elevations. And so if you go to A200, we start to talk about the elevations. We've we proposed to replace the gambrel with another gambrel roof house with dormers. And the last, we have a photo sheet of other gambrels in the city, gambrel roofs in the city with dormers. So we think it fits the precedence, if you will, within the city. It fits within the streetscape for height, and it works within the existing setbacks along the streetscape. Again, I think it's a fairly simple development. It is a pre-app. So we're looking at the street front is the upper image, and it's similar in sort of general layout to the existing street front, where it's a right-hand door with double windows and double dormers. We've increased the height by 9 feet, the overall structure height by 9 feet, and we are now just at 32 feet. So the setback is a 22-30, excuse me, the height is 22-32. We have in that front elevation and all the elevations, we've included a rooftop mechanical enclosure. Right now it looks more like a widow's walk, I guess, and it needs some work, but I think the idea is we have an elevator in the building, and so that would be an access panel to the elevator as well as mechanical equipment on the very rooftop, centered on the rooftop.
And that exceeds 32 feet?
Yes, and I believe the HPC guidelines allow 30 inches for mechanical equipment. So we would propose hiding that equipment, screening it. And whether it's this or some other application, that's how we propose to do it. Again, not much land. And so we're forced to use our footprint as well as we can. The bottom proposed left side or east side elevation, we are greater than 45 feet. And so we've chosen to, and the guidelines talk about any elevation of greater than 45 feet, we should break up the mass. So in this case, we've gone to a double gambrel look and separated the overall length. It's a downspout. We may do it with a different detail, but at this point, we think this works. It meets the glazing requirements of 33% for the elevation. And again, this faces due east. This also meets the building code requirements of within X feet of the property line, you're limited to the amount of windows you can have. So we have the historic preservation guidelines, which talk about the 33%, I believe. And we have the code requirements that say no more than X windows if you're within so many feet of a property line. So this works from both of those in terms of glazing, area of glazing. To the left of this bottom elevation is the water side. To the right is the street side. The next page is A201. So we have the upper elevation is the water side elevation. Simple decks similar to what's on the current house. And then the interesting or odd elevation is the bottom left. That sits on the property line, and by building code, we are not allowed any windows, any openings whatsoever. I think we'd like to develop that with some details, maybe false fenestration, something to break up that mass more than it is here. But again, this is from the building code point of view, we may not have windows in this or openings in this elevation. Let's see, what's it?
No.
EXC 100, the next page is just existing plans. I would like to go back to the very last sheet of photographs, which is sheet 4 in the numerical, in the numbered sheets, sheet 4. And this just shows other gambrels in the city and other dormers in the city on some pretty nice buildings. The Shaw building on State Circle, 81 Franklin, 65 Franklin, which I think you're talking about later, 63, 61, 5 North Street, ex-Mayor Hillman's residence. So we've looked at these other houses to give us some idea of proportion and dormers. On page, we provided 3 pages of how we think this project does in fact meet the design guidelines. And I think that's really for your review. I don't really know if you need me to go through these. We do believe that the project as presented meets the guidelines. We believe it needs work, it needs detail work, but I think the massing, the streetscape, the general layout, it all works pretty well with the street and does meet the design guidelines. That's in a outline or a nutshell.
Okay.
And I know it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think probably let's go ahead and get Roberta's input, unless anyone has any overarching clarifying questions. But I think we can just move into Roberta's. I think that makes sense to me.
Tim,
Okay. Yes, Will.
now, a quick question. This is the first time since I've been on the commission that we've been reviewing a request for a demolition. Is there anything special that I should know about that? Either our typical way of addressing these issues or parts of the guidelines that I may not be familiar with?
Yeah, it's a specific guideline regarding demolition, and it's quite extensive in its nature.
So that yes, I read those when I was appointed. So there's
Yes.
nothing else that I need to refer to.
No, demolition is D2, and no, that we go to D2 and go through it in detail.
Okay.
Weren't you involved in the when the garage on King George Street was?
Well, that's right. That's right. I'm diminishing it because of its smaller scale.
Yeah.
Yes, but demolition is D2,
Yeah.
and we can go through it chapter and verse.
Well, that's good, Tim. By reminding me of that, now I feel
Yeah.
more comfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have dealt with it in the past. We take it very, very seriously because it's, to
Yeah.
tell you the truth, the whole reason some of the whole
Yeah.
preservation movement got going. So demolition's a scary word to us, as everybody knows. So, any other clarifying questions before I turn it over to Roberta? All right, Roberta, what are your thoughts? I know you've met with the applicant several times, right?
Yes, and I appreciate all the number of meetings that we've had. This began, I believe, in February.
Thank you.
Correct?
The good old days, BC, before COVID.
BC, yes. And I also appreciate Mr. Schwartz running and his architects running through the guidelines. That's always helpful. I guess both John and I will have something to say, but rather than run through each guideline, I just want to ask in general, these days when an applicant is building to the limit, we have to take into consideration the mass and how much mass is this in comparison to the neighborhood. So one thing that I'm looking at is the houses on either side are at 23 feet on one side and 26 feet on the other. And this is at 32. So what would be helpful to me is seeing the house in form of some sort with the existing houses. And I realize we can look at separate pictures and we can look at the drawings, but I think in the next stage, it would be helpful to the commission to actually see the imprint of this in comparison to the houses on either side. Now, way up the street, the houses do get taller. So if you're looking at the entire streetscape, then that maximum height may fit in. So that's looking at both from the street and from the water. And from the side, what you really can't tell from the side, which has a lot of mass, is what the core of the property was. So it looks from the side, you're not seeing anything that really relates to the front. And the only reason I mention that is that, again, we're talking about mass, and is this too much mass? Could it be broken up in some way so that the side looks like the front of the house with an addition on it? I don't know.
So some kind of perspective drawings, you're saying. Two things I hear you just repeat. Place the building in its environment with elevations and water and street side, and maybe some perspective type drawings that give us a better sense of mass.
Also, a question just for Jay. Is there precedent for having hipped dormers on the front as opposed to
Chad,
the more typical styles of dormers?
I think, well, yeah. Again, we walked through around through the district, if you will, and there are hip dormers throughout. But I mean, I can get specific examples. I don't have them.
That'd be great.
Okay.
I don't have them delineated.
The other thing I should note to the commission is that the proposal is for aluminum simulated divided light windows.
Right.
Tim is grinning.
I saw that.
We had to throw something out there, you know.
You're just checking to make sure we read the applications.
What we also thought you were throwing out is a widow's or captain's walk, which looked like an afterthought. But now that I know it's a mechanical enclosure, I think I feel a little bit better. But I agree, you could probably detail that a little more.
I agree. If I may, 125 Charles Street, which is a pretty important house, does have hipped dormers.
Okay.
Camera with hip dormers, just one of the many.
When I saw the mechanical area up top with the word deck on it, I did misunderstand and think that it was a rooftop deck. So
now, I mean, we're again, based on the height restrictions, we're only allowed 30 inches. That's drawn incorrectly. It's drawn more as a railing system. It's too tall. So that'll change. Thanks.
Okay.
Great.
I'll turn it over to John.
So I did a site visit, and there are a few things that need to be considered when you're reviewing this. And also, Jay, these might be things for you to consider in design changes if you're going to be making any. And one is, it's very important to consider how the additional height of the proposed building is going to relate to the street. And the reason that it's more important here to consider than it would be with maybe some of the other houses is this sits almost directly on the sidewalk. Now, up the street, the houses sit back considerably more. But at this point, for number 9, it's very close to the sidewalk. So a change in height is going to relate to a change in perceived mass, and that needs to be carefully considered by the commission. The other thing, and Jay, I know you gave an explanation for it, but the uphill side, that facade, windowless, because it sits so far forward on the street, it creates a mass when you're looking down the street. It's strong. It makes a very strong statement because this house will be in front of any of the other houses uphill of it. In other words, and it might be 5 feet. I don't know if it's 7 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, however far. But that puts it very prominently within the viewscape. In terms of the consideration of, let's say, possibly creating something that's more traditional in its components, it is, and I'm just throwing this out, but what is typical would be the front-facing gambrel, and then an L toward the rear. That would be more typical for the historic district, as opposed to two equal side gambrel roofs. Just consideration, just something to consider. And I know that you put the aluminum clad windows in there just for me. I lost a lot of sleep over that. And for now, I think that's what I'd like to say.
If I may, anything on demolition?
Maybe I've softened in my later years here, but it's not a significant house. It does contribute to the streetscape in terms of its rhythm, but I don't oppose demolition. And let me say this: we in the HPC do not regulate the interior of houses. However, before I ever knew that Jay was going to be designing something for this house, I did go inside, and it was really quite something. It had every sort of groovy architectural level from the mid-70s that one could imagine, going up and down, stepping this way and that. It was, I looked at it in terms of a renovation, and I thought, wow, this is really challenging here. The interior of the existing house is difficult at best to renovate. Put in the FEMA, the new FEMA codes for height above the floodplain, and it's almost unworkable. So in this case, I don't oppose demolition. And I don't think I've ever said that before.
And I also didn't oppose the demolition. The only thing I had, am I on?
Yep.
Yeah, the only thing I had against it was waste. And that's not in a guideline, but Mr. Schwartz did also assure us that everything would be recycled that could be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. All right, this is a big one with lots of moving parts. So I'd kind of like to go through with the commissioners separate guidelines in terms of, first, I'd like to talk about demolition and make sure we're all on the same page there. Then I'd like to talk about the height in general and whether we feel like it's completely compliant from a height point of view, and then additionally massing. And then I'd like to talk about fenestration in that order, because I think there'll be some discussion about fenestration, and that'll hit a bunch of the different guidelines in the process, if that's okay. So, starting with demolition, commissioners, does anyone have any feeling that it is not compliant with D2? And I'll prompt you a little bit. It may be approved if it's a safety issue, the Department of Public Works orders the demolition because it's dangerous. Or number 2, it is removing an inappropriate addition or incompatible building, and such removal will have no adverse impact on the streetscape. We should be considering whether it is a contributing or non-contributing building, whether it's a primary or secondary, the age of the resource, and it's within or outside the period of significance. Furthermore, is it the last one of its type in the district?
Nope.
If it's a good example of craftsmanship or design, evidence that rehab or restoration is neither technically or economically feasible, or imminent collapse. Then finally, feasibility of the alternatives to demolition. So all those speaking words, they're all in the guidelines. Is there anyone who feels strongly that it is out of compliance with any of that?
Tim, I would have to say I looked at this file this morning over breakfast at about 6 o'clock, and I didn't have a file there in the Dropbox I was looking at. So I did not, and I didn't see any of the exhibits that were shown during this discussion. So I don't feel prepared to really talk about it. I did look at the Dropbox or the Google Drive file, and I didn't see it there. Did I just miss it?
I did not see it either.
So you haven't seen anything, Will?
No, and I was trying to look at it as we were moving from the previous projects to this one, and I still couldn't find it anywhere in my drive. But I will try to save time, if I may, by saying that after your review of the specific guidelines and hearing what Jay had to say, I don't feel that I have any problem with the demolition question.
Okay.
And without seeing the drawings, seeing the whole file, I'm going to have to make my comments very general, and I would have anyway. We've seen a lot of this happen throughout Annapolis in the historic district and elsewhere. This is simply too much house or too much structure for the site, even given all its limitations. I don't, not having seen the drawings, have any intention of commenting on the specific issues that you rightly raised, Tim. I just think that the applicants need to go back with their very excellent architect and rethink what they're requesting.
So you're referring to which guideline, B3, for instance, building height and bulk,
In
and
general,
visual relationships. I mean, you need to, you need to give me something to write into the notes about what, you haven't seen the drawings yet, but when you do, take a look at when you say too much building, what you're referring to.
a blank wall that's so prominent, a house that's so close to the street, as all the things that John were saying, just translate them into the specific guidelines, which you know so well.
Okay, well, you will too. So yeah, when you do see the drawings, go ahead. But I think you're talking about building height and bulk.
Yep.
And relationship of parts to the whole.
Yep.
Now, I will say, I'm I think I'm strong in technology, but I frequently find my weak points. So have I missed it somehow?
Well, I see it. Bobby, do you see it?
Yeah.
It's in the Google Drive?
Yes.
Because I opened the Google Drive over breakfast this morning.
And you looked at the meeting, the drawings,
Yep.
The
Yeah,
folder.
I
for
was just
October
looking at
13th.
it 10 minutes ago. I couldn't find it.
October 13th.
And you could, excuse me, you can also link to it from the agenda, but I'm trying to find it on the Google Drive now. I'm trying, but if you say it is on the Google Drive.
I didn't find it from the agenda in
I
mine
just
either.
placed the link in the chat. If you'd like to link to it, it's right there.
And Joel Braithwaite Officer Law also did not get access to the Google Drive.
At all?
And it's in there?
Yeah. It's the
I'm
last
looking
night.
at it. I'm looking at it. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I sat down, I did this over breakfast at 6 a.m. and I did not see it. I saw the other pre-app, but I didn't see this pre-app. So I just thought nothing had been
I had-
you, Bill.
presented
having the same experience.
previously. I thought I was expecting
it's
to
gonna
have
diminish our
a
conversation.
share screen event.
Hey, Bill,
So
were you-
we always have very strict rules that the applicant has to submit a week in advance. So you all should look a week in advance. And if you don't see it, then please let me know.
yeah. And Bill Williams, do you see it?
He recused himself.
Ah,
He's my firm. He's,
exactly. I forgot
his
to
firm.
mention that at the beginning. Never mind.
Okay, well, I can apologize if I missed it, but as I said, I opened
Well, it's
the Google
puzzling.
Drive up at 6 this morning and did not see it.
And Will, you just opened it up now and you don't
I
see
just
this
opened it up now, but not from the drive.
Okay, but you can see it now.
Yes.
And Joelle, you have access to the folder, correct?
Wait a minute. So
Joel
Will,
doesn't matter.
you saw it from on Google Drive?
I through Zoom, where you see all the people that are participating.
In chat?
Yes, in chat.
I didn't know I was on a team in chat with this group.
On the bottom of the screen, there's 4 buttons: participants, chat, share screen, and record. If you click on the chat button, you'll get a panel on the right-hand side of your screen that will show you conversations taking place on the side. In this case, it's from the clerk and it has a link to that pre-app.
Yep. That's how I
Okay.
got it.
Great. So now you can take a look at the actual drawings and we can continue the discussion. So Kim, let us know if you can see the drawings when you do. Okay.
Okay. Right now I'm on the screen and let's see what I can do.
Put your mouse over one of the pictures of us so that you get all the options up on the screen. And a bunch of stuff should pop up at the bottom.
And it also says chat there too. Or you can hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen and they'll pop up too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully, at least Will, now you're looking at it and you can
Yeah.
you can confirm your comment. Any other? I do think that under D2, the demolition of this existing non-contributing building, we seem to have isolated that it is between. It's no earlier than
30.
No, certainly no. But if it was up to 1942, we would need to consider it. And I think we know it's no earlier than 1939 ish, and certainly there by the mid 50s or something is there. So I think we can say that it does not fall within the period of significance, which is what our determination is. Therefore, it is non-contributing. I guess under the guideline, I would say that this is an incompatible building. It's not. It doesn't contribute in any way. So I feel that I don't have any. I can't point to any non-compliance regarding demolition under D2. And it's certainly not the only resource of its type. Well, it's kind of unique. It's kind of a funny. It's something we wouldn't approve now. It's kind of a false. It tries to give a false sense of history, actually.
Hey. Good job.
Now Will's dog is trying to get in.
Yeah, trying to get my dinner.
Okay, so that's demolition. Just real quickly, if we're starting at A, views from the water. This is a waterfront lot. It is visible from. So under A3, does anyone have any concerns that it diminishes any of the views of the town or is incompatible with its neighbors?
I'll be interested when they do send a full application in seeing some actual photographs with some kind of sense of what the building is going to look like, because it is taller. I'll be interested in seeing how that affects not just that house that's to be built, but the buildings on both sides of it.
Yeah, I think a panorama of the environment will be important for understanding that. I think at least one of the photographs that Jay presented does show the nature of the facades, at least on two other sides, and neither of them are historically they're I hesitate to say modern, but they're not contributing in any way. It doesn't. Also, when we talk about A3, we talk about iconic views, important views. It doesn't have an adverse impact on any important resource. So I find that one okay. How about massing? We're talking about B1, B2, B3, visual relationship between the old and the new dwelling, which this is a new dwelling. Visually relates to the contributing historic building in the immediate neighborhood. Visual relationship. Actually, any comments from commissioners on whether, again, I will comment that understanding those two, understanding that panorama, at least on either side, will help us decide whether this is compliant or not. The one to the left is kind of unique. It's a gambrel roof with two gambrel roofs and a round thing. You got a lot to work with.
Approved by the District Commission. Way back.
This street is this street could be a poster child for interesting approvals.
Yes.
That you don't want to revisit.
Okay.
From the past.
Ghosts from the past. Exactly.
Kim, are you able to are you able to see it now, Kim?
No, I have not been able to link on to this application.
Okay.
So I'm going to restrain my conversation, except to comment on your conversation.
Okay. Moving on, in terms of massing, I think that John made a point. I think this does build to the limit from the street side. And I believe I understand the code that the street determines where the street side of the building determines where the height of 22 feet at the cornice and 32 feet at the ridge is measured. From the water side, it's considerably higher because of the grade.
Yeah.
And that just, again, the mass is considerably larger than the existing building. And I have some concerns about that from massing in terms of building bulk under B3. Anyone else share that? And ways to reduce that bulk?
I am encouraged that the street side of the building does look considerably of smaller mass than the water side. I mean, it makes an attempt to not look like 4 stories. It's the water side that primarily, looks large to me. So.
Go ahead, Will. You have any thoughts on that?
I think I know enough about the architect's work that he can solve these problems, but I do agree that it's the street side that concerns me more than the water side.
Really? Okay.
The height of that roof is there's a large scale above the dormers.
Yeah.
That will really present itself.
Yeah.
Quite dramatically. And again, I think much of this can be solved with relationships between the other buildings, and perspective drawings really help the commission understand how this looks from the human scale.
Yeah.
And I think we encourage.
And I would even observe that the photograph of the Hillman house, the duplex that it's part of, is, I see what Jay's trying to do, but that's a place where that faces across to a government building that's much larger in scale. So its mass is reduced by the larger buildings that are close by.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of thinking of that, which is an attractive building, but I don't think that approach translates to this site.
And that's guideline B1, visual relationship of the old and new.
Yeah.
The building visually relates to the buildings in the immediate neighborhood. So I would say that there's some work to be done on compliance with that. Okay. The cornice heights, the roof shapes, anyone have any concerns about the choices of the mansard roofs? That's B8. I heard, I appreciate the fact that personally that you're breaking the mass up by adding another gambrel roof in the middle to break that mass up. I think that works from a breaking the mass up. It's still very large. Gambrel roofs are everywhere in the district, so I don't think that's a problem. Okay. Other thoughts on massing or roof shapes? Dormers is D11. I think we've already discussed the fact that there are examples of the dormers that have the clipped gable. Okay. I am interested in talking about the elevations themselves, particularly the roof, or the D19, windows and doors in new buildings. They should relate to the scale and proportion of the building. I'm not doing the math in my head, but both on the east elevation and the water elevation, I would like to see a calculation because it looks to me like 50%. So Jay, I think I think you're going to need to be more persuasive on the actual amount, and not, in other words, I don't believe you. So.
Well, the amounts are on the drawings, but that's okay. We can do a shaded drawing or something. That's fine.
What you mean? The areas are on the drawing? I mean, 33.
Correct. So in a little box on each elevation, but I understand.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that
I think
down.
the issue is more to hear what my take on the pre-app is, to hear what you want, and we will respond to it.
Yeah. Also the actual shapes of the windows themselves, particularly the ones on the attic and on both facades, the east and the water side, are shapes that are not really seen in the district, and I don't think they would comply with the guidelines, and that's under D19. So it discourages these types of shapes. And there's actual drawings that discourage these angled roofs, and I don't think, frankly, they add to the design, but that's my opinion. I'm also, any other thoughts on windows, the amount of them and their shapes? Other folks would like to comment on D19? No other reservations? Okay. Also, some of these windows are large enough on the east. I'm looking at the two windows that look like French doors. They read as doors. Jay, so on the second floor, the left and right windows, they look like French doors that don't actually have a balcony in front of them. So the scale of those don't read to me as windows.
Okay.
So that's, again, the scale and the reading of the facade doesn't make sense to me.
Got it.
On the water side, there are doors that do not have any buttons in them. And we see that a lot. In fact, I think you see it in the neighbor's house. And I think that we see that as a reading, not trying to create a false sense of history. And so I believe, personally, I think that's acceptable. Thoughts? Anybody have a problem with that? And you've chosen the upper, I'll just keep going. In the upper stories, you've chosen the 4/1, and then you've got 8, 8 and 8. I'm not sure why that choice was made, but it kind of adds to maybe a false sense of history. But this is just me. Anybody else, please dive in. Okay, nothing. All right. And then I'm not sure what we can do about a completely blank facade. You can't put windows on it.
Correct.
So that'll be a nice design challenge for you to just break that mass up.
Yes.
I appreciate you drawing the humans in the drawing. Because they reinforce my scale, our scale concerns. But you're building to the human looks really kind of overwhelmed by this. It's still a little overwhelming.
I think it's a child.
Okay.
It's a small person.
There you go.
It's a toddler.
There you go.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Correct here.
We have not talked through any additional landscaping. Your eventual application doesn't look like you've gotten to that point in design yet. You don't have a whole lot to landscape, right? It's going to all be on the water side.
Correct.
Are you rebuilding the parking pad?
Probably will have to because of the demolition and the new foundation work.
And is there a stair there? I'm looking at the driveway.
Stair on the driveway side as well as so on.
I see it now, yeah. There's a stair there's a stair going up to the side door and then a stairs going down to the lowest level.
That's more of a, terrace kind of stairs back. And that's a landscape element, the lower stairs.
And you just need to detail those. On the east facade, is that a porch there on the lower left that looks like a?
Yeah, it's an opening. So it's an open porch below the house.
Okay.
That's an open terrace area.
Okay. With railing. So details of the railings and things like that will be important. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any lighting will be important. No changes in curb cuts or anything.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? More comments? All right. So I can't. So I'll summarize now. And Tammy, please clarify if I'm not getting enough detail. I think this is a project that needs a considerable amount more detail before it is compliant. In terms of B1, visual relationships between old and new, and B3, building height and bulk. And additional information about the surrounding buildings in terms of panoramas and from an elevation point of view and perspective drawings to feel that these guidelines are being complied with. Plus additional work needs to be done under D19 regarding the windows in new buildings. Some of the shapes are questionable in terms of compliance, and we need some more persuasion that we are below the 33% of an overall facade. Finally, that commissioners do believe that the application is compliant with D2. It has to do with demolition. Some of the detailing, particularly on the blank facade, is recommended. Okay, commissioners, anything that you would like to add to my summary? All right, Bueller, you're there? Okay. Okay, Jay, have we provided you with guidance that you can work with?
Yes, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll see you. Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Franklin Street. Is there someone here to represent the owner?
We, Maria and Doug and Kathy as well from Purple Cherry, we're here.
Okay.
I don't believe our camera's working, but we're gonna share our screen anyways.
That'd be great. Hopefully that'll work.
Let's see.
And Will and Kim, you were able to see this one. Is that
Yes.
correct? All right. That's
Yes.
very puzzling.
I was able to see this one.
That's puzzling, but okay. Here we are.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, thanks.
Perfect. So we are proposing renovation in addition to this existing 2.5-story structure. That was
Excuse
built
me.
in
Excuse me.
1903 and 1908 at 61 Franklin.
Kim,
And we're just going to go through this PowerPoint.
excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Tim, we probably need to do the pre-application thing for them.
Thank you, Kim. I didn't, or thank you, Tammy.
Okay, no worries.
I didn't make it. I'm sorry. Maria, this is a pre-application, and it's a courtesy extended to applicants to provide input on the design in advance. It should be in no way construed as approval or denial of any aspect of the application. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tammy.
Are we good? Ready?
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're just gonna run through this pretty basic and brief as we can, even though it's a beast of a project. And then, and we'll just talk through it. So these
That's right.
are pictures of what's happening right now on 61 Franklin. And then these are some proposed conditions, and we've got a direct comparison of what's existing versus what we'd like to do. The first being, this used to be an open deck. Can you hear?
Can you hear
Yes,
us
excellent.
as well as, can you hear Kathy speaking as well, or do you need to unmute her by chance?
She would unmute herself.
Okay.
Is she out of the waiting room? Can someone confirm that? Well, she should be, right?
Yeah, since you're sharing your screen, let's see.
All right, we're just gonna keep going, and Kathy's gonna try and connect.
I can see Kathy's icon and the little red mark on her microphone.
Are you able to unmute her?
No, now she is unmuted. She has to unmute herself, I guess I'm saying.
Okay.
And she's done it.
Kathy, you there?
We're going to proceed with this, and we'll see if Kathy can chime in a little bit.
Sounds good.
Okay. She hears us, so.
Okay. So the first point being, this now sunroom used to be open, or just no windows, an open porch on the existing house. We're proposing a addition here that's a playroom with a master bathroom on top. You can see that on the second floor plan when we get down to that later. And then this is just showing the same thing from the other side. And our next point being, we are going to complete this gambrel piece back here and add on a family room as well as a porch. And this is just showing views of what we're doing.
Of the existing and the proposed.
And then down here is more specific existing photos of what the sunroom is. And as you can see on the inside of the shingles and this step down here, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, perfect. So you can see the step down to where it was on the exterior at one point and then enclosed, I believe in 1960 something, or that was at least the latest picture we could find of when it was enclosed. And then if you move down here, this is just showing in plan the existing footprint of the sunroom now, and then our playroom addition with the porch as well. And again, just showing where the porch would be on the existing side and where it comes in.
Hey, if I could interrupt you while you're on that one real quick. When we're looking at the drawing on the left, it's unclear right now to me how many on the second floor, how many of the dormers you're eliminating. Are you eliminating 2 out of 3 there and leaving 1?
So right here, we are eliminating 1 and we're going to expand the other.
You're eliminating 2, aren't you?
We'll be
eliminating two.
Where the new second floor addition would be, and we're proposing to expand the third.
Oh, sorry, yes, we're eliminating 2 here and expanding this third.
Okay.
And then on the north side of the house, there is an existing back porch with storage. We're proposing to remove that and add this family room, and part of the mudroom goes into that existing piece as well. So you can see here where our existing porch was and what we're proposing to do. And then here shows all of the windows. Almost 80 to 90% of the windows have been replaced with clad windows, and we are proposing to replace those with the Marvin Signature Collection wood double hung windows. And we've noted here the ones that have been replaced.
Yeah, right off the bat, real quick, do you know when they were replaced? You said they're clad. Do you have a date? It would be important to know that.
We're unsure of when they were replaced. Our client moved in and they were already there.
Right. Maybe some research you could do. Are you actually? So it will be important to understand that the replacement windows are not replacing originals in any specific case.
So Doug,
it does not appear that they are very old. If I had to make an initial assumption, I would probably assume in the last 15 to 20 years. They're all a very recent exterior metal clad wood interior. They're not in great shape. And we're proposing to replace them with a true, what would feel more like an authentic, true historic wood window.
Yeah, wood window with true divided light would be great.
Correct.
And then you can see on here this back porch piece that we'll be removing. We want to keep the original door, but just relocate it to the new mudroom. And then in addition, these dining room windows, we want to relocate them to the new playroom piece that would be along this side, because we don't want to get rid of the original windows. And then the rest, as labeled, they're existing to remain on the bays in the front, and this is off that front porch piece. We're not going to touch those. And then you can see the rest are the replacement windows that went into that sunroom piece. And same for the second floor. All of the windows on the second floor are replacements, as we've stated, same kind, we believe at the same time.
And none of them are original?
None of them.
Correct.
There are very few original, and we're intending to keep them, though some of the areas they don't work with a proposed floor plan, as well as they're more in the back of the house. So we're proposing to move them closer to the front to again keep that historic appearance and charm.
Okay.
Some of the windows are not in great shape, so they may have to be repaired and altered. Ultimately, we will have somebody do a better evaluation on those. But the intent on the front facade would be to keep the existing lower bay windows, and we're going to move the dining room windows, which are in the middle right-hand side, closer to the front facade.
And then on the third floor, those are all replacements as well, and we would replace them with wood windows. And then these just show more specifically what we were just talking about. This original back door will move to the mudroom piece, and these windows will move to our new playroom piece, the existing dining room windows.
It is important to note the majority of the windows that we're going to be replacing with wood, we will intend to keep them in the same proportionate existing size that is there currently. There are two on the front facade that,
we can go into it so we can look at it while we talk.
Sorry, we're pulling it up real quick. So there are two on the front facade that are currently just single units, and we're proposing to replace them with double units.
In the same frame,
In relatively the same location. We're going to keep them equally and centered along both left and right of that fireplace.
without any again, we're going to get to this in detail, but the concept that we're looking for is no destruction of existing fabric. In other words, they'll fit in the existing dimension.
They will not, they'll fit in the existing facade. They will not fit in the existing window opening. We are increasing the width of them as we're going from a single unit to a double unit, both left and right.
Okay, we'll have more conversation about that.
So if we go back to where we were, this just goes through the specs of the roof and shingles that we'd like to use on the addition that we're doing.
It's an existing cedar shake and wood trim, and we are proposing to sincerely remove exactly what's there and replace it in kind.
And this goes through the window specs and the door specs. And then these get into more detail of exactly what we're doing now that we've broken it down a little bit. This shows what we're planning on removing and labels in detail, the windows and everything that we just went through. It's really just a more detailed iteration of what we just covered. And
one real silly, strange question, the chimney on the rear, it's retained on the exterior, but not on the interior.
So you actually cannot see anything on the interior of it. It's purely an exterior chimney.
But it doesn't penetrate down into the first floor.
That's correct.
Even today? Huh. What, is it exhaust for the boiler or the?
That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.
That's pretty much the gist of it. And then we are in the back proposing to lower the existing pool. There is a retaining wall, I believe you can see on this next one here, that is failing. And there are also concerns of access from our client's family. So we'd like to lower the pool as well as all the terracing.
The pool sits at roughly about 3.5 feet higher than the lower terrace to the right, which is where you immediately exit the house. The small retaining wall Maria is referring to appears to be starting to fail. So we would be proposing to lower the grade and then introduce a ramp for our client's father, which is currently in a wheelchair. And that way we can have access on the rear side, as access on the front side is going to be very difficult with the front steep slopes.
So I would actually even expand on that. So on the far left side of this property, what is the rear of the lot, there is a retaining wall along the public sidewalk that is probably 6+ feet tall in very poor condition. The property owner formally actually approached the city with regards to lowering it because it's got so much backfill on it. They have given him support to do that work effort. So in doing that, that in concept would lower that whole back piece inclusive of the pool. So it's not just the pool, it's bringing the pool and the backyard and the wall against the public sidewalk down. It's in very poor condition.
Yeah, that's Dean Street to the left there.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Maria, would you do me a favor, please, and go back to the second floor plan for a moment? So the one thing that I would like to just make, obviously point out is on the second floor plan. So these clients have 3 children, and she is a teacher. He runs a business, and they have an au pair. And so what is being proposed, and then her parents come often and help out with the children. So the reason that you heard the request to change the openings that face the front street is literally specifically to gain more view and light into the master bedroom. Currently, the master bedroom sits on the street front left corner of the house, as is currently shown in the plan. That is the master bedroom location. And so the request obviously is to basically expand that opening to provide better view, basically connectivity to the street front. I think from an elevation standpoint, it is proportionately proposed. So it is a request that is being made.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. So it's those 2 windows there on the lower, on the right-hand drawing here.
That's
that
correct.
window and that window, and they're to match. Okay.
Correct. That's correct. So I believe, so let me ask you a simple question. It is accurate to say that basically the new windows, all aluminum clad, were replaced within the last 15, 20 years. 95% of the windows are brand new. Officially, none of those windows need to be replaced if the client wishes to retain an aluminum window. Would it also be accurate that since it's already been altered, that the client has the option to go back in with an aluminum window since the historic fabric is no longer there? Is that a correct statement? Just kind of give me insight to that. Is that a correct statement?
That's not a correct statement. Replacing with an aluminum clad would not be compliant with the guidelines.
So wait, so let me just understand for 1 second. So I do, and I apologize for this.
That's all right.
So people who know me, I live in a 1740 Hopkins National Register property that I restored over 3 years. So I understand the historical guidelines. When original fabric is not there and the existing window is already aluminum clad, altered within the past 20 years, then the original fabric is no longer there. So technically he could keep all of those aluminum clad windows. Is that correct?
You can keep them, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So he could keep them. What he's proposing to do is to change every single window in this house out and go in with wood windows, which is obviously quite unique. And I would ask that you, as a board, obviously give some credit to that for this particular property, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
We'll take that in
Appreciate
deliberation.
it.
Understood.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Yep.
If I could interrupt for just a moment, this is Roberta.
Hi,
I would
Roberta.
like to point out that the windows that have been proposed are proposed not as true divided light, but as simulated divided light.
Okay. Understood.
Rodeo.
All right. Other Maria, other things you'd like to discuss, or you've opened up a.
We're open to you guys now.
Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and get Roberta's comments, and we'll focus on which relevant guidelines we have as we deliberate, because I think we'll hit most of them.
Okay, would you mind taking away the shared screen to bring us back into? our own views of the commission.
Oh, wait,
Go.
here we go.
So I would just like to start out with making a few comments, and John Tower will take over, and then I'll come back.
And can I ask a real quick question? You did meet with the client already, correct?
We had a
With the applicant?
virtual meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's good.
So the general question that I would like to point out for the commission to consider is that, does this building retain integrity with all 4 elevations changing? So there are key words that you need to think about from the guidelines. And those include subordination, differentiation, the preservation of character defining features of the building, the landscape, and the streetscape. Also bear in mind that this house was built in 1908 for Rear Admiral Harry Knox after his retirement from the United States Navy. And it's considered a highly significant Queen Anne style shingle house. With that, I'm going to let John take over, and then I have 16 pages of guidelines that apply to this project.
Yeah,
I won't go through all of them, but I will hit on highlights. But we'll let John talk for a few minutes first.
Okay.
Well, I'll keep it brief. We looked at the plans carefully. Essentially, 6 original windows are going to be kept in place. There are, I think, 8 significant leaded windows that are proposed to be moved into new additions, along with the door in the rear, which will become the new rear entrance. And it wasn't touched upon, but it should be noted, there is a new chimney also proposed for, I think it's the family room in the back of the house. One of the things to keep in mind, and this is just overview, but one of the things to keep in mind is when the retaining wall on the Dean Street side comes down and the pool level is lowered, then there will be a better view of the house, because the house right now is in the rear is somewhat obscured, but it will be in fuller view. And what that puts into play is the fact that the rear of the house is going to be significantly altered with an addition. And I'm still not entirely clear if the chimney that exhausts the furnace is going to remain visible above the roof.
It is,
It
John.
appears to. Yeah.
It will. Yes.
And let me also say this, because this is an unusual situation. I think that the detailing that has been done is trying to respect the original features of the house, but unfortunately they're altered. So for instance, the single window on the front facades on either side of the chimneys become double windows. Windows are moved into places that are new construction, so they no longer have historical significance, but I'm familiar with the house. They're gorgeous windows. So they're wonderful artifacts. I've done this sort of project where you take salvage and you move it into new construction, but it creates something of a false sense of history. It's not to say that the design isn't interesting, or the idea of putting a porch on the side of the house doesn't fit. It does. It's a good idea. Are the additions subordinate? I'm not sure. I'm going to leave that to you, because the front facade is significantly altered in this project. So it's an important thing to consider. The other thing about this house, for some reason, it has a dominant view within. It is a dominant feature within the streetscape. It really is the nicest and, let's say, most proportionately interesting house on that side of the street. And also I'm including the adaptive use of the garage. That was a joke.
John, your delivery is so dry, I didn't catch that.
I missed it too.
There's a lot for commissioners to look at here. It's almost a complete reworking of the house. Roof shingles, exterior shingles, first floor on 3 facades altered. The east side is not altered, really. It's just windows changed. And
John,
yes.
Can I ask you a question? When you say reworking of the house for roof shingles and wall shingles, the roof shingles and wall shingles are in very poor condition. So what they're doing is a repair replacement of roof shingles and wall shingles. Are you concerned with that?
Well, only from the standpoint that I think they're probably 20 years old. And that's really it. They're not original.
So then
Not
are you,
100 years old.
but you're, okay, so I'm confused. Are you expressing concern with the alteration of the exterior of roof shingles and wall shingles? Are you expressing concern with that? Are you desiring it was something else? I'm not sure that I'm understanding your comment to the alteration of roof shingles and wall shingles. I'm sincerely just not understanding. Is that a negative comment? Is that a positive comment?
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
Tim, may I interrupt?
Well, let's just have John
Yeah.
answer that question.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I want to ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
This is turning into a discussion between the applicant and the staff. And I thought the purpose of our review was for us to give feedback to the applicant.
Well, this is a pre-application, and if we were sitting around the table, we would have a relatively free-flowing discussion. So
okay.
I find it appropriate, and Kathy's been before us before.
Okay.
This is not as formal.
Just curious.
Yeah. Okay.
I can respond. So
sure. And I understand her question.
The level of changes that are occurring makes it almost necessary, because each facade is going to be altered. So you wouldn't be able to retain the originals.
So I don't, you and I can agree to disagree, because you can do a partial shingle and stain shingles to match existing shingles to get to the same weathering. So I'm just not sure that I'm understanding, John, if your concern is that 20-year-old shingles are being replaced with shingles, that you would wish that we would attempt to try to keep some shingles. I'm not understanding the direction or the guidance.
Well, I'm not guiding here. I'm just
got it.
That you are going to be replacing these.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the desire of the owner. The owner is obviously desiring to take a house that right now has a tiny little kitchen in the back and raise a family of 5 and put in what is a considerable amount of renovation cost to obviously do a combination of expansion to accommodate his family, but at the same time, preserve and restore components of the existing house. That's what he's desiring to do.
Okay.
It's that simple. Yeah.
All right. Roberta, did you want to go briefly through the major guidelines that we should we should provide guidance on and feedback to the applicant regarding how much they are in compliance or non-compliance?
Yeah, I certainly won't go through I'm on, right?
Yes.
I certainly won't go on through the all 16 pages, but I'll note a couple based on the individual words that I mentioned earlier. So B6 talks about sizing and massing of additions. Additions should be designed to be subordinate to the main part of the building in terms of massing, height, and scale. Additions which compete or obliterate an original structure will not be approved. So the question is, if you're changing, if additions are being placed on 3 sides, is it subordinate? I don't think so. On C2.
Wait, I need to clarify, there are only 2 sides of addition, so I'm not understanding the comment to 3, but that's okay. I don't understand the comment to 3 sides of additions. There's only 2 sides of additions, the left side and the rear.
Well, the front facade is altered.
It's changing, but it's not being added.
Not an addition, so that's
Not
my
an addition.
confusion. Yeah.
Okay, it's 2 sides.
Okay, got it.
Well, show each in kind of a perspective. So it does become a front view by changing the front.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's
In
technically correct.
concept, it's an elevation. I get that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, C2, topographical features should be preserved wherever possible. So 2 things are changing there where the grade is changing in the back for the pool, and then a front wall that didn't exist previously. Under D1, the Secretary of the Interior standards, I've just put a star by 3, changes that create a false sense of historical development. So the design of the changes is using so exactly the form of the original house that the question is, can it be determined that it's different from the main block? Or does the fact that all these sides are changing and the changes that are taking place are so similar to the existing house, they're not differentiated, and then therefore is there a false sense of history? Under 9, additions shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. So what historic materials are remaining in the house? Under D3, there are 3 of 6 dormers that are either going away or being altered. So there are 3 original dormers, 2 of which are going away altogether. 1, as you mentioned, is being widened. 6 of the 30 windows are what's left. Under windows, it's not clear to us, are the frames to be replaced? So is it just the sash? Are the original frames in place, or are
No.
they being, pardon me?
No, the original frames are not in place. So
Okay.
they are brand new window replacements replaced within the last 20 years. And you are correct. Those are proposed to be replaced with solid wood windows. So if there's a concern with that, then the existing windows can remain. They don't need to be replaced.
Okay, so you say solid wood, but they're not true divided light.
They
correct?
can certainly be true divided light. They were wood interior, wood exterior, simulated divided lights. If the commission would like to see true divided lights, they could be true divided lights. But it seems that you have concern with the windows, the new windows being replaced. Roberta, by your report, it's sounding to me like you don't want those windows being touched, so I'm not clear.
I didn't say that.
Okay, so you said something like 22 windows were being removed.
Right, and that's why we're here to discuss exactly what is original and what isn't, and that's why
Got
we're asking about things like frames.
Yeah, the
Yes.
frames, I guess what I'm hearing is, are the frames being replaced along with the windows?
Yes.
And the answer was yes.
Okay, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And I think John already mentioned the fact that the diamond pane windows are not staying in their original location because they're moving to the playroom. So windows are windows that comprised the character definement of the building are being moved around to suit the additions. And I believe we asked about the chimney that you said was remaining and being added to with another chimney next to it on the back. So those are the major concerns to the commission. Are these additions subordinate? Do they differentiate from the original construction? Are the character defining features of the building being preserved? Can you tell what was the original building? What was the historic building when all is said and done?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Lots to talk about again, just like the last one. We didn't talk about demolition. I'd like to add that to the conversation. It's just the demolition, which is D2. It's a demolition of a feature on the house, and that's the left-hand side. So I'd like to talk about that just to clarify. Will the existing structure basically be completely removed?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's an old pier. It's an old pier structure, and it's sometime in the mid 1900s. You can tell from the lower level crawl space that it was infilled with concrete block and brick veneer so that it presents as though it was a continuous foundation, but it was not originally a continuous foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's something just across the commissioners. Does anyone feel as if the demolition or removal of this particular feature is a problem in terms of compliance with demolition? I'm hearing that it's a compromised feature that has been upgraded over multiple periods of time recently, in the recent past, and does not preserve its original integrity to 1908. Roberta, would you agree with that statement that it is not, it's been compromised? Yes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, thanks. So does anyone have a comment on demolition? Okay. Then again, I'm going to try and separate the discussion around the horn here into a few of the things that that Roberta mentioned. I'll go in relative ease of sequence.
Sure.
C2 had to do with topography, and so there's quite a bit changing on the rear in terms of topography. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Oops, hold on, lots of dogs.
The window, let's talk about B6 after that in terms of subordination.
Okay.
And we'll have a discussion about that. And then I'd like to talk about differentiation, and I think that has to do with the use of materials on the new components that look identical to the old components. And I'd like to talk about that.
Tim, I also need to, Maria texted me, reminding me that on the very top of the existing roof, just so everybody knows, it's currently asphalt shingles.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we know.
Yep. All right.
Okay.
Great. We'll talk about topography, then we'll talk about subordination, then we'll talk about differentiation. And then I think we need to talk about, well, when we talk about B6, let's just talk about massing in general. Okay, so that's B2.
Sure. Yep.
B2, B6. And then finally, let's talk about windows.
Yeah.
And that's D17 mainly. All right. So in that order, topography, it appears that mostly has to do with lowering the rear and changing some retaining walls. There's not a lot of detail right now, I think, in the presentation, other than the location and concept. So
yes. From the landscape architect, yes.
Yeah.
So we can obviously expand on that detail, but
Yeah,
I think fundamentally the issue or the question is on the table, does the lowering of that back have caused any concern? I don't even know when it was raised up and for what purpose it was raised up. It's very odd. It's almost like it was raised up for the purposes of the pool. I don't honestly know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our guideline says historical topographic features should be preserved wherever possible. It's
Okay.
even, there's no, Roberta, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no historical aspect to the topographical feature here. And there's no modification on the front of the house in terms of topography.
That's right.
The front
is there not a retaining wall being added to the front?
No.
Kathy, yes, there is, but we can certainly discuss that with the clients and our landscape architect. That was put there for
that was for outdoor patio purposes, not for the structure at all. So that could go away, Maria.
Okay.
Yeah. If it was on the front, that would become a historic. This is a really amazing street,
Yes.
of course, as we all know, that the hillside is prominent and character defining to the whole street, and the history is very clear. It goes without saying that this building built in 1908 is a contributing structure, and we are going to be applying strict guidelines. Okay. Other commissioners regarding topography? Let's see too. Anybody? Okay. Let's talk about just the scale of the addition, particularly on the left-hand side, and how it relates to the original building in terms of subordination. That is B6. What are thoughts in terms of scale and massing of this addition? Particularly,
Tim, do you mean this addition specifically, or all the proposed changes to the exterior?
We can go through them one by one. I think that let's separate them perhaps into the rear. There's the porch, the open porch. There's the extension on the rear, and then there's the large two-story one.
Can I ask for clarifying information on this point?
Of course.
If the architect can tell me, I would like to know what's the current square footage of the house and what will be the new square footage? And more importantly, what's the running feet of exterior wall surface now and what's proposed?
So give Maria a moment while you keep going through other pieces.
That's great.
So let me just address the second one first, which is the running perimeter. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The perimeter edge? So Maria, the footprint, basically on the addition on the left, any expansion of the footprint of the original footprint. In other words, if it added 3 more feet to the footprint, not square footage, but linear.
Both. I want to know both.
Oh, are you wanting square footage?
Yeah, I want to know what's the square footage of the current house, the footprint.
Got it.
And what will be the new square footage of the footprint? And then what's the actual running footage around the perimeter now and as you've proposed?
Okay, so she will have to do that and she can take that off while we keep talking. I don't know if she
Yeah.
can give it, give
Mhm.
her some time. She's got
Oh,
to do
sure,
some
that's great.
Oh,
calculations.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Maria, obviously you have the basement plan too. So your basement and attic, the 2 floors. And Will, are you wanting, obviously, how do you want her to address the porch? Because how do you want the porch addressed? Because we don't typically think of it as square footage. So talk to me about that.
I would like that included. What I'm trying to get is a quantifiable set of numbers so that
Got
when we
it.
talk about changing and subordination and massing, I have something more concrete to refer to. That's all.
Got it. Right, keep them, Maria, keep them kind of separated so that you can just tell Will, 300 feet is being added here, 200 feet is being added here, 400 feet is being added here. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Got it. 1 sec. Keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So again, questions out. I can break the scale and massing. Again, additions shall be designed to be subordinate, and that has to do with massing as well as with Will's point is overall scale. So there's a rear looking at page 7, which actually has all 3 of the components. There's the enclosure of the gambrel roof, and then the bump out.
Yep.
There's the porch, and then there's the 2-story piece.
Yes.
So I'll kind of cut a little bit to the chase. I can see the subordination of the porch and the bump out on the back. I have concerns about the roof line of the 2-story, and seeing that as subordinate to the original structure. And I'm curious about other commissioners, if you would comment on that, please. Anyone?
Well, Tim, I'm not sure that I completely understand your question, but if I'm understanding it well enough, I would say that I'm concerned about all of these additions, some of them smaller and some of them larger, in the end swallow up the existing building and would change my understanding of it and its presence on the site greatly. And I would not be able to tell. Because actually, on one level, if this were out in the middle of, open spaces, it'd be a wonderful addition.
Mm-hmm.
Very consistent, but we're looking at this through a different lens.
Yeah.
So may I ask a question with regards to that so that we can expand on that conversation?
Certainly.
So does the commission, because the end of this might be that the owner just doesn't do anything and honestly sells the property. So I just need to understand and understand that I understand subordinate. In concept, does the commission have the ability to tell a property owner that they can't do a 2-story addition? Forget the subordinate or not, forget the architectural material or not, forget the design or not, just the fundamental. Are you saying that this property owner cannot have a 2-story addition?
No, we approve 2-story additions on a frequent basis.
Okay, perfect.
Our role is to apply the guidelines, and it quite clearly states that addition. This is B6, and it's chapter and verse. We approve 2-story additions on a frequent basis. They are differentiated and they are subordinate.
Got it.
And also it goes on to say the historic building should retain its original massing and visual characteristics.
Got it.
And those are problematic in my mind with this design.
Yes, you would rather that it not be a gambrel swooping shape. So a 2-story box with a hip roof on top or some other architectural feature that does not mimic or mirror the existing structure would be preferred by the commission.
That's your choice about how you address it. I'm not sure you could have a smaller gambrel roof. You can use materials to differentiate. It's your design choice.
Yeah, I understand. The hardest thing about a gambrel is it's a wood shingle. So I understand that. Mm-hmm. Yes, got it.
Okay.
And so if a completely different design than something that was respectful to the existing structure were to come in, then we won't hear the counter, which is, well, it doesn't look good with the existing gambrel structure. Isn't that a catch-22, Tim? Yeah, I know
Well,
you get it.
no, I get it, but we can't
Yep.
say it doesn't look good.
I
We
understand.
need to tell you it doesn't. It is not subordinate.
Perfect.
It competes
Yep.
with the with the original structure, or it conceals
Got it.
visual characteristics which are character defining.
Sure.
So that's it's up to you to design that. But
Got it.
okay, yeah. As I said, the differentiation can be done in a variety of ways, in form and in materials.
Sure.
There's also anyone else want to chime in on that particular massing?
I would actually go to what were the express concern, Will, with regards to the back. So it is subordinate in its scale, and maybe it's a material differentiation necessary. But it's are you concerned with it not being subordinate in its scale?
I'm not so much concerned with any individual one of the additions, but rather the fact that the building is being essentially wrapped in a new skin. And it would be hard to read them. And I'm not going to be more specific right now because this is only a work session. And I know these aren't your final plans. I think you stated very well for me what my concerns are and some of the ways that within the guidelines they could be addressed.
Got it.
Yeah. And as just to reiterate your point, Will, calling it wrapping of existing historic features is specifically called out. New additions should not conceal historic features. And this is clearly concealing and moving some significant historic features. So I would cite the 3 dormers going to 2 on the second story, and then the one that remains being modified. That's not simply not compliant.
Got it.
Okay. We already did talk about differentiation, and that can be accomplished in a variety of ways. Other architects, you can see it all around, different siding, different treatments. It's really a design choice on your part.
Yep.
In terms of the windows, let's be, so this is D17.
Tim, can I interrupt you really quick before you move on? We can close our square footage question that Will had.
Of course, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Marie.
So the new structure, I'm going to give you the difference so you don't have to do the math here. The new structure, first floor, is about 2,900 square feet compared to what the old structure was, about 2,100 square feet. So we're about 700 square feet plus on the first floor. On the second floor, we've only added about 600 square feet by enclosing that gambrel and with that master bath piece. And then on the third floor, we're not expanding the square footage at all.
Okay, and can you give me an idea of the running feet around the perimeter?
She probably needs to calculate that. So
if you give us a minute, we'll get that back to you. And then we'll also
Okay.
include these numbers in our formal submission.
You know, you don't need to, like crunch numbers too hard because this is a work session. And what you told me was helpful in and of itself. If you can get the other number this evening, that's great. If you can send it to us at a later time, that's great too.
she'll know it in about 5 minutes, Will. She's clicking it on the computer.
Okay, good.
So
No pressure. No
doing
pressure,
it.
Maria. No
problem.
pressure.
Maria's used to pressure.
Okay.
She thrives under it. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, so we have several issues regarding the windows. I think what we're seeing is presented is a replacement of you're only first of all, I'm just going to state some things and you can agree or disagree. You're only replacing windows that have already been determined to be not historic.
I'm going to let Doug answer each one of these because he's the one who did the physical inspection of all of them. And Doug is a 15-year architect, very well experienced. Go for it, Doug.
Okay.
1 second. One second.
Oh, he went to the bathroom. Okay, no, I don't know what he did. They're still at the office.
Okay. Well,
But in concept, that was a correct statement.
All right.
Yes, correct. So existing her original historical windows would be retained and repaired.
Retained
okay.
and repaired. And
Yep,
in
retained
your presentation,
and repaired.
it'll be important to understand which, so some of them, are any of them staying in their original, other than the front door?
Oh, yes.
Other than the front
Oh,
door, how
yes.
many windows are staying in place?
So Doug, the first question was, what was the first question?
It's all right. Any of the windows that are being replaced, complete replacements, including the frames, are non-historic and been determined to be vinyl or aluminum clad?
Yeah, the majority are a Pella, a metal clad exterior, wood interior.
Okay.
It would be the sash and the frames. They have been replaced, so we would replace them.
That's non-historic. Okay. Right.
But what Doug had said earlier, you are correct. The same size, sash, frame, in the same opening, same trim condition, replacement in kind, but with the true divided light wood window. Right. There you go.
And the front doors staying the same.
Yes.
With the exception of these two windows on the front facade.
Correct. That is a request to make those two openings larger. Correct.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Yes.
So the windows in what is currently the dining room are going to be removed and used in a different location.
I'll get to that, John. I'll get to that. I'm not going to miss that. Don't worry.
I've looked at the windows, the replacement windows. I don't know if they're sash packs or if, and in other words, that would just be
a frame. Yeah.
Right. It would be frameless.
But Doug can answer that because Doug inspected them. So Doug, do you want to, are those sash replacements with existing frames or are those full frame replacements?
They are new frames as well. They're the Pella push jam replacement frame and window sash.
So are they within the existing, were they within the extant framing or and I'm talking about the wall framing, or was the wall framing altered?
We have no way of knowing, nor does our client have any way of knowing.
And is the exterior trim around the windows original or replacement?
If I had to make an assumption, I would say it was a replacement at one time based on the type of windows that were installed. But I'm not 100% positive.
There's no way that the full window unit could have been replaced without that trim being popped. Whether or not trim was then reinstalled after that window, there's no way that any of us know that.
Correct.
I mean, we certainly understand that the shingles are obviously newer, 20 years old, aren't original. So I don't know if the trim is original.
Yeah.
We don't have any concerns about taking a piece of trim off and submitting it.
Well, I think that'll be just a clarifying question when the final application is.
That's the point I wanted to bring up. That was all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine, John. No
problem. Obviously, we're going to talk more about the windows, and there are multiple components to windows. But so what I'm getting at is we have 30 some maybe windows that are being removed and replaced in their current locations. There are two that are being requested to expand, and so that is the problematic. Those are the problematic windows, and they would not be compliant with the Secretary of the Interior standards, our very base standards in terms of just destruction of historic fabric. So this is fabric from 1908 that you want to cut into and remove.
Got it.
That would be that simply would not be feasible
Got
in my view.
Can I ask a really quick silly question, and John might be able to answer this one.
Mhm.
So the windows right now currently in the master bedroom are not egress, do not comply with egress. When this project is done, the city fire marshal will see it as substantial regardless of what we do and what gets approved. They'll see it as substantial due to the greater than the 50% number. That's going to cause the sprinkler requirement to come in, which is going to require the interior to obviously have to be accommodated for the sprinkler. And then the code official is going to look for egress windows. How do we address that when we are not protected by my house, National Register, and I didn't have to comply with any of that? How do we do that on this property? John, tell me how we do that so that I know.
Well, I don't see how you're going to avoid a sprinkler.
Yeah,
I'm not
actually,
trying
can we
to
just,
avoid a
yeah,
sprinkler.
we're
How
not,
do we
that's a
do
little bit
it?
off topic and we're running late
Got
here. So I'd like to
Okay.
clarify that question, go back to
Got
it.
it. Okay, good.
Kathy's
Thank you.
asking if there's a life safety issue
Yeah,
that you find during the process of your design and it needs and it requires that, then we will be able to consider that. But
got it.
I
Thank you.
believe that's the issue. Your life,
I didn't know.
you know,
That is
egress,
correct.
Egress
That's-
is something, and we do take that into consideration when
I
we're
understand.
evaluating. Yeah, but I don't think that, I think these windows will comply.
Got it.
So it would be very, very significant to the Secretary of Interior standards 2 and
Okay, thank you.
9. You know, it's pretty clear: do not destroy or alter historic materials that characterize the property. So those windows are going to be truly problematic.
Okay.
Okay, then we already talked about obscuring existing windows, and I don't know whether you didn't talk about relocating the second story windows, but you did talk about relocating all 5 of the panes on the lower level in the dining room.
Yeah. So yes, that's correct. So the dining room, basically the kitchen is very tiny. And so we're trying to expand that kitchen into that dining room area that they no longer need the dining room. Those windows are long. Therefore, obviously, if cabin 3 is installed, then it cuts across those windows. So, that is why the proposal came about, basically to put them in a place in which they would be more visible.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's problematic moving them. I understand the design
Got it.
requires it, but D16 talks about shall be preserved in place.
Okay.
We understand that the reuse is very, very important, and you get some credit for that. So if we can overcome some of the massing problems.
Got it.
Again, I'm curious about other commissioners' feeling about relocating these very significant. It changes. So it kind of goes back to the wrapping concept. Okay, we've wrapped this building, and by necessity, you're not going to obscure those and keep them interior, and you're moving them. But it doesn't appear to be fully in compliance with D16. Other commissioners, strong feelings about the relocation?
Back on. I haven't heard from Bill. Did we lose him?
I don't know. Nope, not.
Because I figured this would be something he would.
I do not see him. All right. Okay, well, I think we've given you the feedback that read closely
okay,
and explain how you feel that it is compliant in your you can be persuasive in your testimony, and that
perfect.
That's your objective, is to be persuasive in your testimony.
You got it.
Okay. Those were my. Roberta, did I miss any? I'm looking at D2 we talked about. Demolition. Yeah, I think we've covered the major ones. Any commissioners' thoughts more?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That you represented us well.
Okay. All right. If no one has any more input, and we'll get those dimensions eventually.
Yep, Maria.
I've got them.
All right, go ahead, Maria. So this is the running total on the the first floor on the exterior linear feet on the current and the future?
The existing first floor is about 222 feet, and then the new would be 255.
Doing what?
Will, unmute yourself.
Say it again, Maria.
Yeah. Yes. Say it again, please.
So our existing is 222 feet roughly, and our new is 255 feet roughly.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And does that include the dimension of, did you go inside the porch and around, or did you go outside?
That includes the porch. The 255 includes the porch.
Okay, so that's on the outside, which actually is probably, think about
So
it, it's a rectangle.
silly, Will, does that help you to kind of, even though it seems like a lot was happening, it's actually, it's 500 square feet downstairs, 500 square feet upstairs, and 35 additional linear feet. Does your reaction to that go, wow, that's not as much as I thought? Does your reaction to that go, holy cow, that's way too much? What did that?
Well, my reaction is that it wasn't as much as I thought it would be.
Got it.
So now I need to rely even more on what kind of to scale elevations you show us in a formal application.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And that's what I would concur with that. I think we just need to see the massing and differentiation and subordination come into compliance.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Tammy, I'll summarize now. We are, this is a pre-application for 61 Franklin Street to add a two-story, to demolish an existing porch and add a two-story addition, an enclosed, a semi-enclosed porch and a extension of the rear, as well as a regrading of the backyard and reconstruction of a retaining wall. So we discussed, there's a lot of work to be done on this. The headline is a lot of work to be done on this, not in compliance yet. The commissioners did not have issues in terms of C2, the topography. Did not have issues with D2, which had to do with the demolition of the porch. But in terms of guidelines B2 and B6, the subordination and the massing of particularly the two-story component are concerned and are not compliant currently, as well as the differentiation of the new components. We look forward to more detail on the replacement of the windows in the replacement of the existing windows and their existing frames for most of the windows, and then the retention of a few of the existing windows in the front door. That would have to do with guideline D17. We have concerns about the relocation of the very character defining leaded glass windows that are in the dining room, and the relocation of those is an ongoing concern. It's a little unclear on that. The request for two windows on the front facade to be enlarged and destroy some character defining material, plus also alter a primary facade is not in compliance with D1 and the Secretary of Interior standards 2, 9, and 10. So that is that's not in compliance. So did I miss anything, Roberta? Anybody? Tammy, did you get all that okay?
I did.
All right.
I did.
All right. Kathy and Maria.
Yep.
Did we give you feedback so you can continue with your design?
You did. And so I think that as we continue to progress, can we go to, Tim, would you want us to come back as a pre-app to review, or can we go directly to Roberta, or what? if we want to get some
Roberta, you
additional
can chime in.
feedback.
Kathy, our normal process, go ahead and bounce things off Roberta first, but I
Got
would
it.
definitely see this eventually coming back, but you don't have, your next step can be work with Roberta.
Got
But
it.
when you're ready to come back for a pre-app, you can do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just so I understand, there would be more discussion with me and then another pre-app, correct? Okay.
I think that would be the way, yes.
I'd recommend that. Yeah. Okay.
Complicated.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you. All right.
great. Thank you,
Thanks.
guys. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you.
I actually want to
All
live
right,
in this
bye-bye.
house.
I want to live in this house too. Thank you.
I just want the master bedroom.
No, the bathroom. Okay.
All
Good
right.
enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
Good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right. I think we have one more item, and just a short administrative business. Administrative approvals for January through March 2020 and April through June 2020 were submitted. They don't require a motion or approval. They are have been submitted. And we always like to say thank you to Roberta and John, because 80% of the work, even more, 85% gets approved administratively. We tend to forget that. Okay. Before we adjourn, I have any other business, one more item, any other business. I'd like to we don't have anything on the agenda for our administrative meeting in October. So I'd like to put the rules of procedure back on there. I think we're ready to go. I will be sending the draft out to refresh your memory where we stood in February. We reviewed them in 7 meetings, believe it or not, to get to that point. There were 2 open issues that I'll clarify. One had to do with the definition of repair and maintenance, and the other had to do with after the fact applications. And Joelle had given us in February wording about after the fact application. So those were really the only 2 issues we had open. So refresh your memory, and the way I would see it working, if we have no additional changes in conversation, we could approve them. If there are more notes or changes that you would like me to make, then we can approve them in the November meeting. Does that make sense to everybody?
Good.
Good. Then one final reiteration too, that we did, Roberta and I did a lot of work on the Main Street visual clutter and market space, and all the way out to Dock Street. The mayor and I did talk. He was interested 2 weeks ago. I think I already sent this to you. We came to the conclusion additional public meeting wasn't on we didn't need to do that. There was a tent application which we can build upon. Now they're going to need to reapply for the winter tents, and we have a second bite at the apple. And what I reiterated to the mayor was, it's fine to have guidelines, and Sally and her staff will do their best, but unless the mayor supports planning and zoning when there's a problem, we're back to where we started. And I told him that, and I look forward to his support. I'm meeting with him again next Tuesday.
Sally has drawn up some good guidelines.
Good.
However, some tents have already been approved, some winter tents.
One in the historic district as of Friday. So
well, there's right on Maryland Avenue.
I know. So I agree, John, but we just need to, we're doing, I think, to our frustration in our last meeting, I think at least we got a lot of listening going on right now. The
guidelines are good.
Yeah, we just need to get compliance and
right.
As usual. So life safety is actually the most important aspect of this whole thing. Our visual clutter is important, and keeping our brand alive as a quality place is important, but life safety is as important as anything. So that's why the barriers, we lost the discussion to change the barriers, which are unsightly but required for public safety. So stay tuned on that. All right, any other business? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 10:05. Woo!
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? All right. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to I'll send a rules of procedure out to you.